Hey, so this is a little platformer that incorporates walking, jumping. Primarily, the main draw of this is the one-way platforming we got here. So, the character, as you can see, can walk on this, he can jump, he can crouch, but he can also fall through. He can jump up, no problem. The great thing about this particular system I have in place is that if there were enemy objects or even other player objects, they could be standing on this platform without my character's interaction affecting them. So this does not manipulate the mask of the object. Now, another cool thing about this little project is the parallax scrolling background that you can see there. So if you don't have much time, I'll try to give a quick rundown of what made this possible, and then after that we'll get into the coding of this game. Alright, so this game is based, or rather, the code of the game is primarily based on tutorials by Sean Spalding. So, if you're brand new to Game Maker or platforming and you've never programmed a game like this before, I highly suggest you watch some basic tutorials, uh, preferably tutorials by Sean Spalding on platforming, just so you can get a better understanding of what's going on here. I have a lot to talk about with these systems, and I kind of glaze over a lot of the things that you really need to know. Like, I mean, this right here is the main bulk of code that's involved with detecting collisions, and I don't really explain any of this at all. And there's a lot more like that in this code. And if you don't understand this here, then please go watch another tutorial first. But if you have watched that, if you do have a platformer set up and you're ready to incorporate one-way platforms, then this is definitely the video for you. This line of code is the code that really makes it all happen. This is just a standard collision event, but this line of code determines whether that event is going to fire or not. So if these conditions are met, then this collision event will happen. If these conditions are not met, then this collision event won't happen. And one of the main determining factors of whether it's detected or not is whether certain buttons are being pressed. And that's the basics of the one-way platform. What's next is the parallax scrolling. I'm not a big fan personally of the GameMaker Studio 2 background system. Maybe I'll learn to appreciate it more as I learn more about GameMaker Studio 2, but for the time being, I prefer the old-fashioned GameMaker Studio 1.4 way. Unfortunately, that background system is gone, but the good news is the backgrounds have been replaced with sprites. So instead of having the code say draw background tiled, we just use draw sprite tiled to get the same effect. So we have these variables here. We get the coordinates of the 0x coordinate and 0y coordinate of the camera. We feed it into this function right here. We draw the background, the subimage is 0, and we times the x value times 0.8 to get it to move very slowly. And we have another layer, times it by 0.4 to move it a little bit faster. So I'll go more into depth with that later on, but this is just very simple way of doing parallax scrolling. I see a lot of complicated tutorials, and this is just simple. This is just 3 lines of code. So if you don't have any more time to watch, I hope that helped. And if you want to learn some more, I'm just about to get into this. So alrighty, so I'm just going to do a quick tutorial on how to do one-way platforms in a platformer game. The base code of this has been taken from another tutorial series, so I'm going to be just going quickly over that. That can be found pretty easily. Alright, so let's get to it. Let me create a sprite. Let's see, green is good. Yes. Player. Okay, I'm going to create another one for the ground. I'm going to call it collision. This one I'm going to make semi-transparent. Alright, and I'm going to make another one final sprite for the one-way platform. Make this one also semi-transparent. Alright, so now I'm going to create the player object. Create event. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. Okay, this is not necessary yet. So these will, actually this one's not needed. These will kind of make more sense throughout. If you've seen other platformer tutorials, then a lot of this will make sense. Okay, so step event. Alright. So I'm going to copy and paste the code up until I have the one-way platform collision. So, what this is right here, if you haven't seen any previous tutorials about this, it's just creating a variable and inputting code in there that corresponds to the variable. That way, if I wanted to change this to say like WASD, I can just change the code here. So that would be A. And then you can just replace this here with whatever you want. So, and 2 reasons why I have multiple variables for the jump key. One is just the initial pressing and initiation of the jump, and the other is the duration for which you're holding the jump, and by releasing that there's going to be code later on that will stop the player from jumping any higher, and that's how you get variable jumping. So okay, so move is a variable that just determines whether okay, so if key right is being pressed, then you get a 1. If key left is being pressed, you get a 1. If they're both being pressed, 1 minus 1 equals 0. If key right is not being pressed but key left is, then it's 0 minus 1, so it's -1. And if key left is not being pressed, then key right is 1, so move equals 1. So move is either equal to -1, 0, or 1. And then you use that times move speed, which right here I set to 2.5. And HISPA, I guess, which is just h speed, but not using the built-in variable that GameMaker comes with, so not using that. Okay. So right here, first seeing this right here, it's grounded. So that just is going to determine whether later on it will make more sense, but this just basically means whether the player is touching the ground or not touching the ground. This is going to be for an animation later on, so this line here can be ignored for now. Right here is gravity speed limits, so if the vertical speed is less than -10, then that's just going to set it to -10, and then the same goes for this. When v speed is positive, then that's when the player is moving down. So VISPA plus equals gravities are built-in gravity variable. Again, not using the built-in gravity, and that's going to determine the gravity in the game. And if you go faster than if you're not 10 is like the max speed. If you haven't reached the max speed yet, then the gravity is going to increase. Once you hit 10 as the speed, the gravity is not going to increase. Now this line here, if grounded equals, so this means if grounded is equal to 1. So if we're on the ground and we're pressing the key jump button and not pressing the key down button, then this is our jumping code here. VSpeed equals negative jump speed. Jump speed here is 7. So that can be adjusted, and that'll just determine how fast we move upwards. And it's negative because Y in GameMaker starts in the upper left, moving down. So negative is moving up. The reason why I'm putting not key down here will make sense later on. Actually, I'm just going to get rid of that for now because it's not really needed yet. The main point is that if we're on the ground and the key jump is being pressed, then the VSpeed equals negative jump speed. I'll just add a reminder for myself. Add not equals key down. Okay, so next line of code here. So if VSpeed is less than 0, which means we're moving up, and we let go, so not key jump held, that means we let go of the key jump button, and that means that we set the VSpeed to 0, and then the player will start moving back down with gravity, so we're cutting off the speed upwards. So this line right here is for variable jumping. Alright, so this right here is just your standard code for horizontal collisions. This isn't my code. This was from Sean Spalding's tutorial, but I haven't found any better way of um, detecting collisions. So this is the code that I use pretty much in all the platformer games that I make. This is pretty much the only time that I personally use a while loop. I just don't like them in general, but for this it works really well. Um, okay, so we have to finalize the horizontal. So this means that we're giving value to the hspeed variable that we created. So up until this point, hspeed doesn't really mean anything. Like you can put values into it, but it won't output. It won't actually have an effect on the gameplay until this line right here. X plus equals HISPA. That initiates the code so that whenever we input numbers into HISPA from then on, it will have an effect in the game. And this line here is the vertical collision. So this will be for so basically the same as the horizontal collision, except when we are moving down or up and hitting the ground. And as you can see here, this is important. If we are, this here determines whether we are on the ground, and if so, grounded equals 1. If we're not on the ground, then grounded equals 0. So I'm gonna just see if we can do anything with this yet. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm still used to GameMaker Studio 1.4. Call this ground. Player. One way. Okay. Oh, and I haven't created the other objects yet. So, collision. Forgot to set this bright for this. And yeah, one way. Although I'm not going to put this in the game yet because we have no code for it yet. There may be an error just because I used code from, I did this project on my own before doing this, so I may have forgotten to remove some variables. Yeah. Okay. So create. This will be for animating it later. Let's see if that works now. That is likely because I didn't initialize the horizontal speed. Sorry, vertical speed. Y plus equals Vispa. Okay, so that's working pretty good, and you can see that if I just tap the button, he doesn't jump very high, but if I hold it in, the player moves a lot higher. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so I'm going to type out this code here. The initializing of the vSpeed variable will come down here. But this is the main line of code that I'm doing this tutorial for. I'm going to use it's based around the same system we have here for collisions. The main line of code on the top, I'm assuming, depending on how you have your collision set up, could be easily interchangeable with other type of collision systems. But obviously, since I've used this type of code here, I'm going to keep it consistent with that. So, vertical one-way collisions. The reason why I'm doing this tutorial is I haven't really seen many tutorials that cover one-way platforms in a way that's kind of useful in the game. Like, I've seen tutorials where people will kind of like nullify the collision mask temporarily when the player presses down. That seems to be a common one. The problem with that is if you have an enemy object on the platform and you get rid of the mask, then the enemy will fall through too. So this code just makes it so that you as a player, the player character, is the only one affected by the actually, you know what, it's not even the object itself is not affected. This determines how the player interacts with that object. Okay, so if place meeting way. So if we are, so this is the y plus Vispa. We are determining if the one-way platform is below us, or technically above us as well, because Vispa can be negative. So even though it's plus Vispa, if Vispa is -7, it would be y plus -7. So y subtract 7. So this is if you're moving up or down. And Vispa greater than 0. So this right here is important because this is determining whether this is making sure that we can jump through from the bottom and up. So if I'll just finish the code here, but this is if the Vispa variable is greater than 0. So actually, no, that's when it's coming down. I'll just finish the code here. Left. Okay. And not key down. I'm going to expand upon this later on and add it so that so it'll be at the end of this video, it'll be that you have to press the down button and the jump button to go down, but for now, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to keep it as if you press the down button, then you move through. So the reason why this is not all these these aren't happening, this means that you will be just colliding with it normally, like you'd normally collide with any object. And if you're pressing the button, then that kind of like nullifies the code, and you can just move through it like it's not even there. I'm just going to copy and paste this here. So if these conditions are met, so if you're not colliding with this particular portion of the sprite and not pressing the down key, then treat it as a regular condition. Otherwise, it's going to treat it like there's no object there. And there'll be another section here, just fixing an animation problem later on. But for now, there's no need to add anything more. Oh, and I didn't add the one-way platform. Okay. Okay, we can't jump high enough because of the jump speed. So let's just change that to 10. See how that works. See, so because we were moving up and not pressing the down button, could pass through it. So that's because of the different, the multiple different, so Vispa greater than 0. So here we're moving down, and right now Vispa is equal to 0, so we're colliding with it. But here, because in the code, if Vispa is greater than 0, so yeah, if Vispa is greater than 0, then we stop. If it's negative and we're moving up, then it's not going to detect that collision. And for the collision rectangle part, the way that I initially had written the code was that the collision with the rectangle, right now it looks like how I have it set up is that it's detecting the whole sprite. Initially I had it set up so that it was detecting just a small portion of the sprite, but for whatever reason it's working. I was just messing around with the code in my other file. And finally, for the key down, not key down. So, okay. So I've already explained why you can move up through it, and when you move down, you collide with it. And because I'm not pressing the down key, it's detecting the collision. If I press the down key, then we go right through. And if another, whether it be a player object or an enemy object, were on this platform, and I press the down key, they wouldn't be affected by that. They could just collide with it normally, but we move right through. So that is the most important part of this tutorial. Is just that little bit there for the one-way platforms. But I am going to add a few more things in here just for fun. So yeah, I'll just add some animations to this just so you can see how to implement animations into a game like this, and do some parallax background scrolling in a way that I haven't really seen done in Game Maker Studio 2. So yeah, I'll just show the creation process of the sprites. They're pretty terrible, but I'm trying to improve on that. So I'll just show a little speeded up clip of me creating the animations for this. Alright, so now it is time to add the sprites. Okay. I named this one splayer underscore idle. Image. Convert to frames. Okay. Convert. Image. Auto trim. So these two frames here will just be the idle image. So we don't need that. Alright, so it's a feature that I'm getting used to in Game Maker Studio 2 is that the speed is determined by the actual sprite and not just in the game code. Middle center for the origin. Alright, that's good. Sprite. This one's going to be him walking, so these two terrible frames. Alright, so S there. Alright, so that's good. Convert to frames. Convert. This will be his jump animation. So when I drew these, I had multiple frames for his jump, like him kind of crouching down before he jumps up, but it didn't look that great when I initially did this project, so okay, so I'm just going to do one keyframe for this, which is just him jumping in the middle of his jump. Okay. So this is him jumping, and for this sprite here, it's going to be the falling sprite. So S player fall. And one more for the player. Okay. And this will be him crouching. Alright, so I'm going to add some more sprites in here, but first I want to make sure that the collision mask is consistent between all the sprites, because if it's not, then it's going to cause problems when the sprite is moving. So 3, 3, 12, and 26. I'm just going to keep that as the numbers we're going to use. So you can see the numbers aren't the same. So I'm going to go to manual, 3, 12, 26. And these two are the most important ones to sync up, because the idle state is going to be when he's just standing still. The walk state is going to be when he's moving. So if the collision mask isn't the same, so this one, for example, bottom 26. This was bottom 26 originally. This one's bottom 26 now, but it was bottom 25. So what that means is that when we changed animations, because the collision mask changed, and because of gravity, when we moved to the walking player, the collision mask would change, player would move down. Once we release the key and it goes back to an idle state, it would be stuck in the ground, if that makes any sense. So that's why keeping the collision mask consistent is important. 12, 26. Alright, manual. 3, 12, 6. I'm actually going to leave this one here as 8, just because if it was 3, it would be all the way up here, which actually in this game is fine. That's not going to affect anything. But if you actually want to implement crouching into your game, then by adjusting the height here, that would allow you to say, like, move underneath objects you couldn't when you were standing straight up. However, if you were to do that, you'd need to add code that would accommodate for the fact that if you released the crouch button when you were underneath an object that you can't stand underneath at your normal height, that it would keep you in the crouched animation until you were free of that position. But that's beyond the scope of what we're doing right now. So I'll just leave that as is and add the rest of the sprites. Okay, import. So let's do this one here. I'm going to leave the origin for all these images in the top left, because it'll just make drawing these images easier. Be back, or sorry, yeah, far back. Import. So B, I'm going to call this parallax. And tile set. Image. I'm just going to trim this one. Tile set. Create a tile set using this. So I named it kind of funky. I'm used to doing tile sets differently. I'm just gonna name this. Actually, I won't be lazy. Okay, this will be S tile set, and this will be T tile set. Okay. So for the player, I'm going to change it to idle. And this is where these images, these sprites here come into play. I'm creating a sprite that will contain, or a variable that will contain each sprite. So we have idle, walk, jump, fall, crouch, and walking sprite to variable to determine whether we are walking, a crouching variable determine whether we are crouching, and yeah. So let's see. So I'm going to set up the animations here. And I'm just doing the animations in the step event rather than the draw event, just because it's essentially just changing the value of variables rather than just manually drawing things. So this line here, if HISPA equals 0, the image X scale is 1. If HISPA is not 0, then the image X scale is going to be the sign of HISPA. And if you don't know what that means, the sign of an object always brings it to either like a -1, a 0, and a 1, I believe. Let's see. Sign. Yeah, so 1, -1, or a 0. So if the horizontal speed is -7, so -7, sine of -7 is -1. If sine was +7, the sine of +7 is 1. Okay. Now if you could technically just put image X scale equals sine hispa, but if you don't account for when it's 0, then the sprite could be drawn invisible. So if you were not moving, it's neither -1 or +1. I've had that happen a few times. So this line solves that problem. You just tell it if it's equal to 0, then image X scale equals 1. You could put it to -1 if you want. It doesn't really matter as long as it's not 0. And then this part of code, because if it's not equal 0, you don't have to worry about 0. It's either going to be -1 or 1. Now on to the rest of the animations here. Okay, so walking. Abs move. So let's just get rid of this for a second. So back up here, we determine that move is either key right minus key left. I did that whole explanation. So it's either -1, 0, or 1. So what abs move does, what abs does is make it always a positive number. So this essentially takes away the fact that it could be, move can be -1, 0, or 1. Abs makes it so that it can only be a 0 or a 1, because if it's -1, then it'll convert it to a +1. So if move is 0, we're not moving. If move is 1, then we are moving. And we have to be grounded. So if we're on the ground and we're moving, then the sprite index equals walk, and walk equals splayer_walk. So idle. So if the horizontal speed is equal to 0 and the horizontal speed is equal to 0 and we're on the ground, then the sprite index will be idle. Jumping, if the Vispa is less than 0, which means we're moving up, and we're not on the ground, then the sprite index is equal to jump. Falling is the opposite. If we're moving down, but we're not on the ground, then the sprite index is equal to fall. And crouching, if hispa is equal to 0, this can be changed. Just to make this simple, I didn't want to have a crouch walking animation, so for mine, I have it as if hispa equals 0, just so that you can only crouch if you're not moving. But you don't technically need this. This right here is the more important part of the code for crouching. So, so if hispa equals 0 and you're on the ground and you're pressing key down, then sprite index equals crouch. The crouching variable I mentioned before is true. If these things are not true, then crouching is equal to false. The reason why I had the crouching variable is just for one line here. Let's see. So before I had not key down, so this is where we're going to change it to we're going to change it to the crouching variable. So you can so if you press down, only down, when you're on the one-way platform, you'll crouch instead of falling through the ground. So not crouching plus not jump or key jump held. Okay, so this means if crouching is equal to 0, that's what not crouching means. And same for not key jump held. The reason why I'm doing key jump held is because I have two key jumps here. So key jump is key pressed, so it just acknowledges when you press it, and key jump held is when you hold it down. I tried the code initially with key jump, but it only moved him down 1 pixel, and basically it means you'd have to kind of mash the jump button a whole bunch of times before you'd fall through the ground. So by just changing it so that it's while you're holding down the jump button, it just gets rid of that problem. And why it's a plus rather than an and, I'm actually not that sure yet. I had it as crouching and, so not crouching and not key jump held, and it wasn't working properly, so I just tried putting a plus in here, and it worked. So I'll need to think about that some more, about why it works that way and not the other way. But for now, that's just what it does, and it works. So I think that's all the code we need for the player. Now we're going to add two more objects in here. So far back. No sprites needed there. We're going to use the draw event. Draw sprite. In GameMaker 1.4, this was draw background, but backgrounds are now sprites. I've seen a whole lot of tutorials explaining backgrounds using this background system, like layer X and layer Y and all this stuff, but I find it's really laggy and it doesn't draw it as quickly as I want to. So anyway, what I'm going to do here is draw the image, the background, the far back background, just so that it's always in view. It's just following the view, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second here. Far back. Subimage 0. Oh yeah. So there's okay, XX equals camera. Let's see. Okay, I think this is it here. View X, camera, view camera 0. I'm going to change this to YY. Oh. Declaring it as a local variable. So we don't need it for anything outside of this code right here. Okay, before we go to the parallax scrolling background using the same system, I'm just gonna mess around with the room here. So I did that all in one layer. Okay, so just gonna change this to 180. Viewports, enable viewports, visible 20 by 180. Let's just do 1280 by 720. Alright. So I'm going to create tile set layer. Going to create, not actually going to use the built-in background system. I'm just going to use regular objects layer. Back. And alright, so in the far back layer, I'm going to drag in that object, the O far back. I'm going to drag this in. Okay. Oh, oops. I want to do that for the ground. Actually, I'll just add some objects here so we can't go outside of the view. One way. This is where I want to change the grid size. Yeah, that's fine. Tiles. Just make a random tree right here. Okay. And gonna need to make another tile layer just to cover this up here. Player. Why is that his default? Okay, cool. Now, when I play this, the end goal, the collision object and the one-way object, they're going to be invisible, but for now, they'll still be visible. Oof. Oh shit. What happened there? Alright, so there's a few issues. Obviously, the collision with with the one-way platform has now messed up for some reason, and the background is technically doing exactly what I want it to do, but just aesthetically it would look nicer if it was higher up. So let's see, where does the grass end? Far back. YY minus. Let's just do 120. Another thing is the player's jump speed is now pretty high, so let's put that down a bit. What do I have different? So this code might actually be needed. However, no, that still wouldn't fix the, I mean, it fixes the animation problem, but it doesn't fix, yeah, it doesn't fix that. Alright, and that is way too high up. Did a minus. Let's see. Move this right here. There. Let's see how that works. Jeez. Let's just try something like that. Yeah, so that for the background makes sense. Okay, let me just try this out again. Alright, so where I made my mistake was I looked here, 127. Let's just bring up the calculator. Okay. So 180 is the pixels height-wise. Subtract 127, 53. So that should be the number I'm looking for. Let's see if that works. Okay, hold on a second. So this has nothing to do with the one-way platform. What? Okay. I'm not sure what's going on here. let's just try this out. Try this out for a second. Get rid of the whole one-way platform code. Okay, so it's nothing to do with that. Try something. Crouching works, walking works. It's jumping that doesn't work. Could be, yeah, top left. So that's not going to fix the whole issue. Oh, maybe it does. And that's, I guess, goes to show why the sprite information is so important. I mean, I was kind of focusing on the collision mask, but the making sure the origin is consistent amongst all the sprites is super important because as was shown here, it can mess things up in really weird ways. Okay, and we can't fall through. Okay, we can. Okay, so I know what's going on here. We don't have a code that accounts for if you jump while pressing down. So what we want is when you're pressing down, see how we can jump? We want to change the code so that when we're pressing down, he can't jump. And that will allow us to fall through when we press down and press jump. Alright. And this, okay, right here. This was what I was saying before. So, and not key and not key down. And he can't jump high enough. But he falls right through, and he can't jump as much as I press the jump key while I'm pressing down. And that allows us to fall right through. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the create event, change the jump speed to 7, see how that works. It's a bit high, but you can jump on here. Variable jumping works. One-way platform, that works. Crouching. Background is perfect. So all we need to do now is just add the parallax background and make these collision sprites invisible. So that's easy. Okay, create object. Oh, parallax. I'm just gonna copy and paste this code. Except this time, because we wanted parallax, draw sprite tiled. Okay. What I call it? Be parallax. And I'll keep all that the same as well. So I already have this parallax layer set up. So all I need to do is drag that in here, and it should work. And of course I made a pretty big mistake there. To make it move, let's just do 0. Oops. Geez, what did I do? Okay. Just say like 0.4. There we go. I actually think it would look a little bit nicer if we made this one parallax too. And again, there is a system built into Game Maker Studio 2. I've only seen tutorials for that uses the layer system and the built-in backgrounds that they have, but I've tried using this and it seems a little laggy. So this is kind of like the old school way of doing things with backgrounds. I'm gonna make that a little bit higher now that we have another background, and I'm gonna times it say 0.8. The closer to 1 you get, the slower it moves. So you can see it's moving very slowly in the background. I do need to move this one down a bit. Let's try that. Oh no, that's going to do the opposite of what I want. Oh wait, no, it worked. So there we go. Good one-way platforms, crouching, and parallax backgrounds. Alright, hope that helped. Thanks for watching.